and changed the way that every student at Robb and their families remember that school forever.
Dr. Guerrero described his first minutes at the hospital as the gunshot victims were arriving from Robb Elementary School.
I raced to the hospital to find parents outside yelling children's names in desperation and sobbing as they begged for any news related to their child. Those mothers' cries I will never get out of my head. As I entered the chaos of the ER, the first casualty I came across was Mia Cerrillo. She was sitting in the hallway. Her face was still clearly in shock, but her whole body was shaking from the adrenaline coursing through it. The white Lilo and Stitch shirt that she wore was covered in blood, and her shoulder was bleeding from a shrapnel injury. Sweet Mia, I've known her my whole life. As a baby, she survived major liver surgeries against all odds. And once again, she's here as a survivor, inspiring us with her story today and her bravery. When I saw Mia sitting there, I remembered having seen her parents outside. So after quickly examining 2 other patients of mine in the hallway with minor injuries, I raced outside to let them know that Mia was alive. I wasn't ready for their next urgent and desperate question. Where's Elena? Elena is Mia's 8-year-old sister, who was also at Robb at the time of the shooting. I didn't find Elena. But what I did find was something no prayer will ever relieve.
The doctor's next sentence contained that word that is so disturbingly graphic. There has been some recent debate, as Chris and I were just discussing, about possibly showing photographs of what happens to children who are shot by high-powered assault rifles with bullets traveling at 3,000 miles an hour and expanding as those bullets pass through human flesh and bone. Some people suggest that those images would change America from the country where guns are more important than children. The theoretical model for that would be Emmett Till's mother's decision to leave his casket open after his lynching so that America could see what happened to her son. She did that in the hope of changing America. I don't know. I don't know what can change America, and I don't know if it would help to present any more graphic accuracy about what weapons of war do to children's bodies. But Dr. Guerrero told us what we would see if we saw what happened to the children in Uvalde. And I, for one, know that I absolutely do not want to see that. There was no warning issued before Dr. Guerrero described what happened to those bodies in today's hearings, but I must issue a warning now. The next sentence you are about to hear contains a word that you have not heard before about what happened to at least 2 children, the first 2 dead children at the hospital that Dr. Guerrero saw. It is by far the single most disturbing thing and most graphic thing I have ever heard about a mass murder, and you will never forget it. And maybe for you, the best decision is to just leave that word buried in the congressional record and never know it. But it is the truth of what happened, and Dr. Guerrero is going to be haunted by this for the rest of his life, and he told this truth to Congress because he wants us to know this truth. And so here is Dr. Guerrero's description of the first 2 dead bodies he saw, a sight that he says, quote, "No prayer will ever relieve."
2 children whose bodies had been pulverized by bullets fired at them, decapitated, whose flesh had been ripped apart.
Decapitated. Not a single Republican who heard that today was moved by that word, not one. Democrats want to ban the sale of the weapons that do that to children, but Republicans want everyone to be able to buy assault weapons, including 18-year-olds. Republicans defended that at today's hearing, even after hearing Dr. Guerrero tell them that a mass murderer with an AR-15 in an elementary school classroom literally blew the heads off children. That didn't change the thinking of one Republican on that committee today, not one. I thought I knew what those weapons could do, but I didn't know that. Decapitated. That's why they needed green sneakers to identify the body. of one of the kids, as Matthew McConaughey told us yesterday. That's why they needed DNA tests in some cases. That's part of why parents waited so long to find out if their kids were dead or alive. And that's why Matthew McConaughey, although he was mightily trying to control his anger, found himself literally pounding the table once yesterday in the White House press briefing room. Decapitation